We all know that Prismatic Hunter has some fantastic builds, including Celestial Nighthawk with Still Hunt for great boss damage, something like Liar's Handshake as well for very high melee damage, and even some exotic class item combos that are really good. But in today's video, I wanted to take a step back and look at a classic exotic with Gyrfalcons paired with Prismatic. Now, what's pretty cool with this build is that you can either use the base Gyrfalcons exotic chest piece or the exotic class item that has the Gyrfalcons perk on it. Now, the main benefit of both exotics is your void weapons will gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible, and obviously volatile rounds can pop anti-barrier champions, but that also counts as a light debuff on a target as well. But the main difference between the chest piece and the class item is that with the chest piece, when you are invisible and defeat a combatant while using a finisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage. You and nearby allies gain a reserve overshield and improved class ability regeneration. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. So it is pretty decent when it comes to team play on top of survivability. And with the exact class item, the Gyrfalcons perk actually comes in the second slot. So the first slot gives you a multitude of options, including the Assassin's Cowl perk, Heart of Inmost Light, Shards of Galanor, Bow Tracer, Caliban's Hand, and even Renewal Grasp. So there are plenty of good options here. Personally, I'd probably pair up Heart of Inmost Light with Gyrfalcons just to have the ability energy. I know some people would like to go with Assassin's Cowl because you can actually go invisible with the melee, but with this build in particular, I don't find it as effective. Even something like Caliban's Hand wouldn't be bad, so that powered melee final blow will actually cause an ignition at the target's location, so that could be kind of cool. So you do have multiple options with the class item. Under the Prismatic subclass, to be honest, you can use just about anything, and this build is going to work out perfectly. Every single ability that you can use is going to apply some sort of debuff. You can switch out some aspects, even a couple fragments as well, but I'm going to go over what I like using in particular, especially in regards to the benefits of the artifact perks. For our abilities, first up, I'm going to be using Marksman's Dodge, and I'm not really going to be using it for the reload aspect, and to be honest, I do also like using Gambler's Dodge depending on what activity I'm doing, so I can get my melee ability back after I dodge near target. But the main reason I want Marksman is because the cooldown is the fastest out of all of them, and the reason I want that is so I can spam Ascension. This is a new aspect, so essentially, while you're in the air, you can actually consume your class ability to summon your arc staff, propelling yourself upward and creating a burst of energy that amplifies allies and jolts targets. So jolt is going to be good for taking care of overload champions, but the main thing is getting amplified because under the artifact we have galvanic armor. So while we have the Prismatic subclass equipped, incoming damage from combatants is reduced while amplified, and obviously survivability is such a big thing in PvE. We definitely need to take advantage of this. For the rest of our abilities, I like triple jump for movement, but you can use what you like. For the melee, I personally like Withering Blade. Not only can I handle overload champions, I can freeze targets and handle unstoppable champions. It's a really powerful melee. You do get two of them, which is pretty nice. I know some people like Knife Trick, so you can scorch targets, cause an ignition. Same thing with Threaded Spike, hit multiple targets. This honestly would not be bad with the Caliban's Hand perk on the exotic class item because every target you kill with it is going to make that target explode. I know a lot of people go with the combination blow with Gambler's Dodge for that aspect. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. It doesn't apply debuffs, so you're going to have to keep that in mind. I personally like Withering Blade as the melee. For the grenade, I opted for Grapple to cause a darkness debuff, and I can take advantage of not only the grapple itself, but grapple melee is a big thing in this game. But to be honest, any grenade will work here. I would recommend darkness abilities, though. You could go with the Dustfield Grenade as well. It's a fantastic option here. For our other aspects, the big one here is Stylus Executioner. So defeating a target affected by any elemental debuff grants invisibility and true sight. After performing a Stylus Execution, your next melee attack, while invisible, weakens targets. The main thing here is that Stylus Executioner paired with Gyrfalcons is just perfect, considering basically you can have the invisibility all the time. So again, you get to go invisible. When you come out of it, you get volatile rounds. Volatile counts as an elemental debuff. You can go invisible again just by using a void weapon, which is pretty cool. I know I said I paired up with Ascension, but to be honest, you can use any of these if you like, especially if you're going to be using combination blow. I know a lot of people go with Winter Shroud. A lot of people do like Gunpowder Gamble as well, depending on the setup you want, especially with the exotic class item. I personally just like the combo of Stylus Executioner and Ascension. Out of the 21 fragments, these are the 5 that I really like for this build. Number 1 being Facet of Hope. So while you have any elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly, which means we can have the dodge more often, which means we can pop Ascension more often to get amplified and jolt targets. Next, with Facet of Balance, rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy, and rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. Again, we want our abilities as much as possible. This is just going to help us out. Next is Facet of Solitude. Landing rapid precision hits emits a severing blast from the target, while Transcendent, the severing blast is bigger. The main thing is that with this in particular, all we need to do is hit a couple of headshots. It'll apply the Sever debuff, and if we kill that target while they have that debuff, we can go invisible from that. Again, this one is just really good, especially if you don't have volatile rounds or your abilities. You can just use a weapon, and as long as you hit some shots, you're pretty much good to go. The last two are pretty important. Being Fast Ability Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. It's a plus 10 to strength. Then lastly, Facet of Purpose. So when you pick up an Orb of Power, it's going to give you a buff based on the super you have equipped. In this case, I personally like Silence and Squall. This thing is fantastic. It also boosts our Darkness Transcendence meter a lot. It's really good for crowd control. And whenever we pick up Orbs of Power, we're going to gain Frost Armor. In this case, we can get up to 5 stacks, which is a 22% damage reduction. If you wanted to go with something like Silk Strike to get Woven Mail, you totally could. Obviously, the super is not as good as some of the other ones here. If you want to use Golden Gun for precision damage, you would get Restoration. I personally just like having Silence and Squall, though. For our artifact perks in the first column with the Weapon Champion mods, you can use what you like here. Again, just match it up with whatever activity you're doing. In the second column, it's all about giving bonuses to Origin Trait perks for our weapons this season. I personally always have Overcharge Armory on, and I am going to be using Winning Hand for a weapon that comes with the Dealer's Choice Origin Trait perk. But again, read through these, and whatever weapons that you decide to use, just make sure they match up with this so you can get some extra damage. In the third column, I do like Press the Advantage overall for some of this stuff, but basically when you break a combatant shield, it's going to give you increased weapon stability, handling, and reload speed. Swords gain increased guard resistance. I do like Threaded Blast, so when you destroy a tangle with a strong weapon, it creates a larger and more damaging explosion that also causes the Gyrfalcons perk to work, which is just absolutely hilarious, but the AoE explosion is gigantic. So if you're going to be using strong weapon, definitely go with this. I do like Creeping Chill though, because Stasis Weapon Final Blows against slowed or frozen targets released a burst that slows, and since we are using Withering Blade as our melee, as long as we have a stasis weapon on, we can take advantage of that, so just keep an eye on that. But the fourth and fifth columns are pretty locked down. First one being Counter Energy. When you are a member of your fire team stun a champion, you gain energy for your least charged ability. I also like Radiant Orbs here, so while we have that Prismatic subclass equipped, picking up Orb Power makes us Radiant, which is a damage bonus. We can pop Anti-Barrier champions and counts as a light buff, which is pretty neat. We already talked about Galvanic Armor. Next is Shield Crush. While you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or a Void Overshield, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. And while you're Amplified or Radiant, your Grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage. Then lastly, I like Transference here. So you gain increased grenade and melee damage while Transcendent, Weapon Final Blows while Transcendent, refund light and dark energy after Transcendence ends. For some of your weapon options, with this setup, I do recommend a special weapon in the kinetic slot. I personally like the Call. I have Enhanced Slice and Desperate Measures. I can apply that Sever debuff. I can have enhanced weapon damage considering the amount of abilities I have. I'm basically going to have free bonus damage with this weapon, and I can handle Unstoppable Champions with the Sidearm perk this season, so I really like this thing. Mountaintop's a good option as well. The new Lost Signal Grenade Launcher is not a bad option. Riptide with Chill Clip, this thing is pretty solid across the board. Even things like Wither Horde and Conditional Finality are pretty solid options here, so basically use your favorite special weapon. For your energy weapons, we're going to get a little more niche here where we're going to need a Void primary, specifically one that can come with the perk Repulsor Brace. The main thing is that when you defeat a Void debuff target, it's going to grant you an Overshield. Again, with the enhanced one, it lasts for an improved duration. But essentially with Gyrfalcons, the reason this perk is so good is because every time you come out of invisibility, you're going to have volatile rounds. And if you defeat a target with volatile, not only do you get an Overshield, but you go invisible as well. So that's why Repulsor Brace is so good. There are a lot of Void primaries that can come with Repulsor Brace and just decent PvE perks overall. As you could tell, I have Enhanced Frenzy on this Recluse as well. I have an Elsie's Rifle with Repulsor Brace, Desperate Measures. That's going to be really good for this build. I have a Crafted Word of Crota, Repulsor Brace, Sword Logic. This thing is great, especially with Overload Hand Cannon. I can take them out pretty easily with this. But if you don't have a Void primary with Repulsor Brace, again, any Void primary will work here, but if you want to use an exotic, Graviton Lance is fantastic. Obviously, this thing can just wipe so many adds off the field. Plus, we also have Anti-Barrier Pulse. Granted, when you have volatile rounds with this, you're going to be able to pop those Anti-Barrier champions anyway. And with the Catalyst, it also has Vorpal and Turnabout, so you do get an Overshield. It doesn't count as a Void Overshield. Technically speaking, it counts as its own Overshield, so you don't get that, extra buff from that, but still, Graviton Lance is just really good for PvE overall. For your heavy weapon, you can honestly use your favorite heavy weapon that you like here. As you can tell, I'm going to be using Microcosm. Obviously, this thing is fantastic. It's a kinetic weapon. It can charge my Transcendence a lot faster. When I pop Silence and Squall and then use the weapon, I get the, bonus damage with this weapon. It's super, super good. Just overall, I really like it. But if you don't have Microcosm, honestly, any weapon will work here. Edge Transit's really good. It's a Void weapon. I could take advantage of some armor mods, which we'll talk about later. Envious Bait and Switch. I have a Falling Guillotine with Vorpal Eager Edge. Love this sword a lot. So any heavy weapon will honestly do here, though. Before diving into armor mods, let's talk about what stats to look for. First up being Resilience. Obviously, Resilience is the thing we talk about every video. Try to have tier 10 100 Resilience. It's a 30% damage reduction. Obviously, that's going to be huge for us. Next, You have 3 options here. First up, you have Discipline, which is tied to how fast you can get the grenade back, Strength, which is tied to how fast we can get the melee back, and then Mobility, which mobility is tied to the Hunter class ability cooldown. So having a high mobility means we can have the dodge back more, which means we can have Ascension more often to get amplified and jolt those targets. But to be honest, the main one is going to be Resilience. You can focus on the other 3 after that. Starting on the helmet, I like Void Siphon, so those rapid void weapon final blows will create orbs of power. Then I just have Special Ammo Finder with Special Ammo Scout, but you can substitute in, Heavy Ammo Finder with Heavy Ammo Scout. If you want to use something like Dynamo or Hands On, you totally can as well to get that super energy back. To be honest, the main one here is Void Siphon though. On the gauntlets, I'm using Impact Induction, so when I cause damage with my melee, I get my grenade back faster, and Bolstering Detonation with Focusing Strike, so when I cause damage with my grenade and my melee, I'm going to get my class ability back even faster. Another option to look into would be Momentum Transfer, so when you cause damage with your grenade, you can actually get your melee back faster. Pretty much any of these mods are good for ability regen. On the chest piece, you can use whatever combination of reserve and resistance mods that you like. Obviously, make sure your reserve mods match up with whatever weapon types you're going to be using. Same thing with resistance mods, depending on the activity, make sure you have good resistance mods. On my boots, I'm rocking Recuperation, so when I pick up an Orb of Power, it's going to give me health back. Obviously, this is a just-in-case thing, but it is really good on Prismatic with the Hunter overall, since we can't really take advantage of Devour like we can on the base subclass. But we're also going to be using double Void Weapon Surge, so your Void Weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. Essentially, when you collect Orbs of Power, you gain armor charges. With this build, you can have a maximum of 3. With these blue mods, it puts a 10-second timer on that armor charge. So at 3 armor charges, we have 30 seconds of this bonus weapon damage. And lastly, on the class item, I like Powerful Attraction. So when I use my class ability, it automatically collects nearby Orbs of Power. With Reaper, when I use my class ability, as long as I get a weapon kill within 10 seconds, I will get an Orb of Power to spawn. Then lastly, I like Bomber, so it reduces my grenade cooldown when using my class ability, or you could switch this out for something like Outreach, so it'll reduce your melee cooldown when using your class ability. I'm so glad I pulled out the Gyrfalcons exotic again. It feels good using such a classic exotic and having a build that feels extremely powerful that doesn't require you to have something like Celestial Nighthawk or Liar's Handshake on. Like, yes, obviously those builds are very good, but Gyrfalcons feels super, super good with Prismatic. Like I said, the only downside is that we can't take advantage of Devour like we can on the base subclass without, having to use something like Buried Bloodline on Prismatic. But overall, the amount of invisibility you get with Stalk's Executioner on Prismatic is just insane. You can apply debuffs from all your abilities across the board, Ascension, your weapons as well. It's just the amount of debuffs on the field is nuts, and the amount of buffs that you gain from that. You get Radiant, Amplified, a Void Overshield, Frost Armor. The benefits with either base Gyrfalcons or the exotic class armor are just insane. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Gyrfalcons Prismatic Hunter build. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, whether you want to use the base Gyrfalcons exotic or the exotic class item. Both are going to be fine. I'm actually going to put the dim link for this build in the description, so if you want to copy everything that I'm using, down to the subclass, the armor mods, the weapons, even the drip if you'd like. I know people ask me about, shaders and armor mods and stuff like that, so all of that will be included in the dim link. Go ahead and copy it, test out for yourself, and come back to this video and let me know what you like using. To be honest, like I said, there are so many options you can substitute in for this build. I just found something that I like using with it, and it's just going to be really effective overall. In any event, if you enjoyed watching, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any other Final Shape builds I'm going to be dropping here on the channel. If you didn't know, we live stream here on YouTube and then also over on Twitch. Again, there's going to be the Salvation's Edge raid. There's going to be the new activity to get the exotic class items, the co-op mode. There's going to be plenty of stuff to do. So if you want to hop in for any of that, again, hop in the chat. And then also, if you want to be proactive, join my Discord. Again, people are going to be looking to play activities together. So hop on in. We're also talking about anime, tech, and plenty of other games as well. Lastly, if you want to help support the channel even more so I can continue making this content for you guys, you can always look into becoming a member. If you don't know what a membership is, it's essentially like a Twitch subscription. Again, you're going to gain access to the emotes, the monthly badges, and the big thing, which is getting early access to all of my videos. So if you want to look into becoming a member, all you have to do is press the join button, next subscribe, and that'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!